there's a situational or circumstantial dimension to this question. For example, I'm working with an engaged couple right now. They're in their early 20s, which is young today to be preparing for marriage in the church, 21 and 22. And they've been living together for about a year. They're practicing artificial birth control. They're sexually active. One of the things that we do as part of this process of preparing couples for marriage is once we ascertain that they're in this kind of a situation, we invite them to consider, if it's possible, living apart. Now, most of the time that's not possible. Some folks even bought homes together already, in anticipation of being married. So the alternative is to ask them to consider practicing chastity for the duration of their engagement, up to the point where they're married, they exchange consent. This particular couple I'm working with, where I gave them my typical sales pitch on this subject, and I invite them, I say there's no strings attached to this, but the church is not going to refuse to marry you if you say, no, we can't do this, David. But I want them to talk about it, I'd like them to pray about it, and then come back to me, just simply inform me what it is they're going to decide to do. So I had a follow-up meeting a few weeks later, and I had in my notes, make sure you ask them about their decision, and I'm sure they were hoping I'd forget the question, So they sat down, took the coats off, and I said, okay, so how did you do with your homework assignment, and they kind of cringed, and the bride-to-be spoke on behalf of them, and she said, we've decided that you've asked too much, and we can't do that. To which I said, can't or won't? And they hemmed and hawed and said, well, we won't. And I said, well, why? Well, because it feels good. That was the very language they used. It would be awkward not to do this. It would put a strain on our relationship. It's amazing language. This language you'd almost hear people were married in a committed relationship, the issue of fidelity. But the bride also went on to say is that we know that this is contrary to what the church teaches, and we know that it is sinful, and it makes me kind of feel guilty, but we're not going to change our behavior. So you have that situational, that circumstantial aspect on how to make a moral decision. In the language they use, well, it feels good, it would be too demanding of us to not be sexually active. It would be, the word they used was awkward. So situation and circumstances sometimes exert huge influences, and I think it's kind of an indictment to, is this a bad thing or a good thing? Is it morally wrong or is it morally right? And this is a lot of gray, and they've decided that in their situation they're going to leave it in the gray area.
Okay, so this is the first thing. When you have a moral decision is one that involves values. And what is a value? It's a good that's worth pursuing. Some of you have, what do I mean? It's good. I always use the definition of good worth pursuing, worth committing myself to, worth passing on to the next generation. So a value is something that's good, a human good, honesty, fidelity, compassion, but that's worth desirable, that you want it. In other words, when you have a value, there's kind of a charge. Many of you have seen that classic science fiction, the horror film from Frankenstein, way back when. And in the opening of the great scene where he's black and white, I hope they haven't colorized that. They have those great, in Frankenstein's laboratory, Dr. Frankenstein's got the big cathodes coming up on one side, and there's electricity arcing back and forth, which tells you that something big is going on. Well, think of a value as that. There's energy behind a value. It's something that will get you out of your behind and out the door to go to a game for one of your kids. Because why? The value at stake is your support of your child in this soccer game. And your boy wants to see you there. Okay? Now, whether or not he's playing well, that's not the whole thing. You want him to see, he wants to see his dad and mom there, and usually particularly their father. All right? And so that's a good worth pursuing. So what happens, that good worth pursuing gets you out of the television set, or even if you have a long day at work and you're tired, but there's that game, you go. okay? A good worth pursuing